Gunfire erupts in the heart of Beijing, China. What is happening in the country of over 1 billion people? Ladies and gentlemen, today the Hidden Timeline will explore the truth behind the alleged military coup in China, with Chinese President Xi Jinping as the central figure.
Gunfire erupting in the heart of Beijing is no longer science fiction. According to numerous sources within Jiangnan, a coup plot has been launched right in the capital of Beijing, China, and the mastermind behind it is none other than the most powerful general in the country's military, General Zhang Yusha. The event was described as breathtaking, with forces loyal to President Xi Jinping intervening just in time to thwart the plotters' preparations. Although state media immediately reported corruption as the reason, military experts believe it was merely a cover for a high-level political purge. The unusual events began when the Central Military Commission of China announced an investigation into General Zhang Yusha and General Liu Zhenli, two figures once considered pillars of Beijing's military strategy. While China has purged its military ranks on numerous occasions in the past, none have been as shocking as this. Zhang Yusha, once Xi Jinping's trusted right-hand man, has now become the focus of allegations of a coup. Could there be hidden power networks within the Chinese military? And is this merely the tip of the iceberg of a simmering political battle? Despite holding the title of Commander-in-Chief, President Xi Jinping is not a true military strategist. He is a politician who governs the military using party power, not battlefield experience. The person who truly controls the day-to-day military operations is General Zhang Yusha, considered the figure with ultimate operational authority within the Chinese armed forces. In fact, Zhang Yusha is the number 2 figure in the military system, a position second only to Xi Jinping in terms of status, but one that carries the final say in all troop deployment plans. Ladies and gentlemen, what makes this purge so shocking is that Zhang Yusha is not an opposition figure or a member of another political faction. He is Xi Jinping's man, an absolute confidant. Their relationship is built on family ties and history. Their fathers fought together in the Chinese Civil War. They have known each other their whole lives, and Zhang Yusha was retained by Xi Jinping even though he had reached retirement age in 2022. Xi Jinping himself directly appointed Zhang Yusha as vice chairman of the Central Military Commission during his controversial third term. A move that demonstrates absolute trust. But then, in a sudden turn of events, the man entrusted with the highest position of power after Xi Jinping in the military became a suspect in an alleged plot to change the power structure. The question now shaking international political and military analysts is no longer the reason for Zhang Yusha's arrest, but rather, if even an absolute confidant like Zhang Yusha, whom Xi Jinping personally retained after retirement, is removed, who else in the Chinese military can Xi Jinping trust enough to have the strength and loyalty to replace Zhang's strategic role in Beijing's armed power machine? The problem becomes even more serious when looking at the alarming trend. Zhang Yusha is not the first, and certainly not the last, to be removed from the ranks of the military leadership. In recent years, President Xi Jinping has waged a quiet but ruthless purge targeting the very military command structure of the Central Military Commission of China. This body holds absolute power over the armed forces, equivalent to the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States. In the past year alone, at least 8 high-ranking generals have been removed from their positions, including those considered the third most powerful figure in the system after Xi Jinping and Zhang Yusha. This mass exodus of elite leaders is shaking the entire structure of the Chinese military. Amid escalating regional tensions, particularly in the Taiwan Strait and the South China Sea, internal instability among high-ranking military personnel is a significant warning sign. Xi Jinping may be consolidating absolute power, but the price could be erosion of loyalty, something no military leader could fully control before this week's events. Most observers believe that General Zhang Yusha was behind a series of purges within the Chinese military. With real power in his hands and the highest position in the Central Military Commission, Zhang Yusha was once seen as paving the way for Xi Jinping's consolidation of absolute military power. But with his arrest, the power dynamics behind the scenes have become more blurred than ever. The question arises, what is really happening within the Chinese military leadership? A noteworthy story, which may shed some light on the cause, is noteworthy. While it sounds like fictional intelligence, the timing of the leak is particularly striking. A Chinese-American human rights activist who has repeatedly spoken out about China's internal politics publicly revealed General Zhang Yusha's arrest just hours before Chinese state media officially reported it. This detail raises suspicions that there was a high-level leak, possibly even within a group of people who witnessed or directly participated in Zhang Yusha's removal. If someone once considered the second most powerful figure in the military can be arrested so discreetly that it takes an outsider to leak the information, what is the true mechanism of Xi Jinping's security and power structure? Are there multiple layers of hidden power struggles silently at work, unknown to the outside world? The most shocking story of the past week didn't come from state-run media, but from an unofficial source that is increasingly regarded by international intelligence observers: Chinese-Canadian human rights activist Shang Yu. According to her revelations, on January 19, just days before Chinese media officially confirmed the arrest of General Zhang Yusha, she received a secret call from a friend whose identity was coded as Mr. X, a close informant within the Jiangnan inner circle. In a recording released later, Mr. X stated that on the evening of January 18, Beijing time, General Zhang Yusha and General Liu Zhenli, another key member of the Central Military Commission, prepared a coup plan. The objective was to arrest President Xi Jinping that very night at a hotel in western Beijing where he was scheduled to stay. This information was shocking not only because of its specificity but also because it aligned with Xi's strict security practices. He doesn't stay in one place for long, constantly moving between locations to avoid surveillance and assassination. Zhang and Liu's plan was reportedly meticulously prepared, but at the last minute, about 2 hours before the scheduled action, the entire plan was leaked. President Xi Jinping immediately left the hotel and deployed a counterattack using his absolutely loyal security system. As a result, the plan was thwarted before it could begin, and the two most powerful generals in China, who were once Xi's most trusted right-hand men, were immediately arrested. If this information is accurate, this is no longer a simple internal purge but a counter-espionage operation on an unprecedented scale in modern Chinese history. According to sources reportedly close to the top leadership, a shootout broke out in Beijing between forces loyal to General Zhang Yusha and the security units secretly deployed by President Xi Jinping. The incident occurred about 2 hours after the plan to arrest Xi Jinping, allegedly orchestrated by Zhang Yusha and General Liu Zhenli, was leaked. Unaware that the plan had been compromised, Zhang Yusha's forces proceeded as planned, deploying troops to the hotel in northwestern Beijing where Xi Jinping intended to stay overnight. When the advance team arrived, they immediately encountered a special forces unit loyal to President Xi Jinping, a unit that had been secretly deployed and positioned beforehand. A fierce gunfight ensued and quickly spiraled out of control. According to sources, 9 close bodyguards in Xi Jinping's personal guard were killed, while Zhang Yusha's forces suffered heavy losses, with dozens of soldiers killed on the spot. Shang Yu, the first to reveal the coup plot, questioned the tactical deployment of Zhang Yusha's forces. The informant, Mr. X, responded cautiously, without specifying details, only that Xi Jinping was at the hotel that day and that the troops had been deployed beforehand. This answer raised suspicions that Xi Jinping may have received all the operational information very early on, enough to establish a solid defensive position and organize a swift counterattack. With his frequent changes of residence to avoid assassination, Xi Jinping had employed mobile security tactics for many years. Upon receiving intelligence about the timing of the operation, he immediately left the hotel 2 hours before it was decided, simultaneously activating the counterattack order and ordering the arrest of both Zhang Yusha and General Liu Zhenli that same night. Furthermore, members of the families of these two generals were also arrested en masse. This move clearly shows signs of a comprehensive purge, leaving no link untouched. One of the questions that particularly caught the attention of intelligence analysts after the failed coup was why two high-ranking generals like Zhang Yusha and Liu Zhenli acted without protecting their families, knowing that the consequences of failure would be very serious. According to Mr. X, the informant for activist Shang Yu, the answer lies in overconfidence and a strategic blunder. Zhang and Liu believed the plan would succeed swiftly, so they didn't see the need to put their families under special protection. They worried that if they moved, their family members would leak the plan early. But what they didn't realize was that long before, the security system loyal to Xi Jinping had planted agents close to their family members. These agents were silently observing and recording every unusual sign. The incident caused President Xi Jinping a massive psychological shock. According to sources, both his mother and sister were alerted urgently that night and fell into a state of panic. They are currently being taken to an isolated guest house in Shenzhen, where security is heightened with armed forces guarding them 24/7, demonstrating the insecurity even at the deepest levels of power. But what's even more worrying is the reason why someone once considered an absolute confidant like Zhang Yu turned against him. According to Mr. X, this wasn't a premeditated act, but rather the result of a prolonged cycle of trust crisis. For many years, Xi Jinping has continuously carried out purges, eliminating not only those suspected of wrongdoing but also loyal but cautious individuals. The more he purges, the more suspicious he becomes. The more suspicious he becomes, the more cautious and reserved those around him become. And that very caution is seen as a sign of betrayal. A spiral of suspicion, reaction, and destruction has formed, pushing the closest figures into confrontation. A characteristic that makes the Chinese political system particularly unpredictable is its near-total secrecy, like a black box that no outsider can see through. All strategic decisions, internal power struggles, and high-level personnel changes are made in silence before any information is leaked. Even the control systems must be handled with extreme caution. Stories related to the coup plot, while not yet fully confirmed, still warrant serious consideration from observers because their dramatic nature accurately reflects the tension and widespread distrust within the Chinese government. What makes this incident particularly noteworthy is the speed of Beijing's response. Previous high-level purges typically took weeks, even months, from the emergence of rumors to official announcements. But in the case of General Zhang Yu, the information was confirmed in less than 48 hours. This unprecedented move shows that Beijing wants to control the flow of information very early on, possibly to quell speculation or to send a strong deterrent signal to all military leaders that even the most powerful and trusted ones have no safe haven. This is different from the tradition of prolonged delays and silence in previous purge campaigns. This time, the Chinese government issued an official announcement within just a few days of the arrests of the two high-ranking generals. This move not only breaks Beijing's precedent of tight media control but also demonstrates President Xi Jinping's intention to control public opinion and assert his absolute power. In a statement released by the official media outlet, the Chinese government announced that Politburo member and vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, Comrade Zhang Yu, along with Comrade Liu Zhenli, are suspected of serious violations of discipline and law. The Central Committee of the party has decided to launch an investigation into both comrades. Although a short paragraph, it contains characteristic political language. Specifically, Zhang Yu is accused of serious violations of various disciplines, including political discipline, organizational discipline, integrity, mass relations, work, and personal life. In reality, this is a formulaic system of accusations used for years to handle hard-to-talk-about cases, those deemed to have gone against the directives, ideology, or political interests of the supreme leader. No specific details of wrongdoing are given. No evidence, no clear accusations. Only a coded system of language, the way the Beijing authorities often communicate internally that this individual is no longer protected. And in this context, with Zhang Shuxi once being a top confidant, handling him using the exact same 6 disciplinary model shows the CCP's determination to carry out a comprehensive purge with no room for retreat. A few days after China officially announced the investigation into Zhang Shuxi and General Liu Zhenli, One Street Journal published a report that caused a stir among international security analysts. According to this report, Zhang was not only removed from his position for disciplinary violations but is also facing extremely serious charges for leaking technical information about China's nuclear weapons to U.S. intelligence, specifically the CIA. The article claims this information is not based on speculation or external analysis but originated from a high-level, closed-door meeting where top Chinese military officers were summoned before the public announcement was made. At the meeting, government representatives announced that Zhang Yusha was under investigation for forming political factions. This is a sensitive term often used to describe the act of building a private power network that goes against the party's centralized control structure. In the Chinese political system, this is a potentially fatal accusation, implicitly understood as an anti-party conspiracy. Furthermore, Zhang Yusha was accused of abusing his power within the Central Military Commission, the body responsible for overseeing all strategic military activities, from budget allocation and defense contract signing to infrastructure development and weapons production. Observers believe Zhang may have manipulated military contracts to benefit relatives or received massive bribes through the clandestine military power structure. However, the most shocking accusation made during that internal meeting was that General Zhang Yusha was suspected of leaking core technical data on China's nuclear weapons to the United States. This was no longer a mere organizational violation, but a strategic betrayal that could severely damage China's entire nuclear deterrence capability. If confirmed, it would be one of the biggest military leaks in modern Chinese history and a warning about what is quietly brewing within Beijing's power structure. The accusation that Zhang Yusha leaked nuclear secrets to the CIA is the detail that caused the Wall Street Journal article to spread widely globally. However, military and political analysts have reason to doubt the authenticity of this information. The issue is not the severity of the accusation, but the question of whether such information could truly have originated from a high-level, closed-door meeting of the People's Liberation Army without central directives. Imagine yourself in the position of a high-ranking military officer sitting in that meeting room, where it has just been announced that General Zhang Yusha, a close childhood ally of President Xi Jinping, has been accused of being a CIA spy. Given the extreme sensitivity of this information, the likelihood of a meeting participant voluntarily leaking it to a Western newspaper is almost zero. Unless there was a tacit order from the highest level authorizing a deliberate leak. This is a tactic used by many governments around the world to control international public opinion through a media campaign. Allowing a foreign newspaper to publish information that domestic media completely ignores is a way of layering messages. One message for the domestic population to remain silent and ambiguous, and another for the international community. More dramatically, in China, state media only reported that Zhang Shuxi violated political and organizational discipline and other vague content, making absolutely no mention of the CIA or nuclear weapons. This suggests that Beijing is maintaining tight control over domestic information flows while allowing the story to leak out as a tool to shape international perception. What could the goal be? It could be to exaggerate the severity of the purge to legitimize it, or to distract from more complex internal details such as factional conflicts, power struggles, or a loss of control within the military apparatus. If General Zhang Shuxi had truly betrayed the country and leaked nuclear secrets to the US, as some Western sources suggest, the most logical course of action for the Chinese government would have been a massive domestic announcement, completely destroying his personal reputation and sending a threatening message to the entire military and party system. But the reality is quite the opposite. Domestic media made no mention of any allegations related to CIA or Japanese nuclear weapons. All information was limited to vague phrases such as political discipline violations or abuse of power. This raised serious questions among analysts. Could the CIA espionage allegations be merely a deliberate information warfare tactic aimed at portraying Zhang Yusha as a traitor in the eyes of the international public, while the underlying cause was a failed coup attempt that was discovered and thwarted? This cannot be ignored, given Zhang Yusha's unique political background. He was once considered a symbol of power within the military, wielding significant influence not only within the Central Military Commission but also in defense technology and administration. Removing such a figure would undoubtedly create a backlash, something President Xi Jinping could hardly ignore, and evidence suggests this concern is justified. Immediately after the investigation was announced, Beijing significantly increased security around Tiananmen Square, including erecting barricades, deploying police, and placing the area on high alert. History has shown that in 1989, the death of a reformist leader ignited the largest protests in modern Chinese history. When loyalty is pitted against the hope of reform, society becomes volatile. No one forgets that the death of a respected figure can signal upheaval, and Beijing seems unwilling to repeat that. A small detail, but one with significant weight. To this day, Zhang Yusha's name and photo have not been removed from the official website of the Chinese Communist Party. In previous cases, this action usually occurred almost immediately. The withholding of this information suggests that the system is still under evaluation or may have undisclosed considerations, indicating that this matter is not yet closed and may have many layers of complexity yet to be brought to light. At this point, our program will temporarily end. Please leave your comments and join the discussion.